Started here. All right. Hey everyone, welcome to the October Top Talks event. Go ahead.
Great. So thanks a lot. Really looking forward to this. So my topic that I'll be talking about today is can we use personal intuition in a scientific manner to build great products which will be loved by you, your team, and by your customers? So I'd like to start with like three very simple, basic, unique stories. And three stories that kind of will go on to change the world, and you will see how. So first story, let's start with Facebook. So it's 2006. It's been about 2 years that Facebook has been operational. They're getting revenue of about 20-30 million dollars, and they're not profitable. They get a buyout opportunity for $1 billion. This is 16 years back. There are three members on the board. One of them is Mark Zuckerberg. And in that board discussion, after when they receive the offer, they have a 10-minute discussion. And Mark Zuckerberg has this feeling that they are going to be much bigger. And in about 10 minutes, they reject $1 billion, $1 billion, right? There wasn't any, like investment banking decisions. There weren't any sort of pros and cons list. It was like they rejected $1 billion when they were not profitable in about 10 minutes. Second story is at Apple. So Apple was doing great. Steve Jobs had come back at that time. This is, I think, late 2000s again. And Apple wanted to venture into retail space. So, the Apple stores that you see today, which are the most profitable retail stores ever to have existed. When they were about to start with the first Apple store, it's New York, where they had launched the first time. They were under a lot of scrutiny because Apple was a computer company after all, and in the entire retail store they only had 4 product lines. So how do you actually build an entire retail store for 4 products? So this stock started to get a lot of hit. Everyone said that as usual they're going to go bankrupt. It's not going to fly. So they were under a lot of scrutiny and under a lot of pressure. And 2 months before the first launch, Ken Johnson, who was hired to start the retail store, he says he postpones this entire launch because he wasn't feeling right. There wasn't the right feeling that he was experiencing. Again, so no user testing. It wasn't like some users came and they gave some feedback. None of that. Under a lot of scrutiny, they still were able to kind of push their entire launch, which was speculated by the entire world, by I think about 4 to 5 months after that. And finally, they launched. And the last story is Uber. So Travis, the CEO, this is around 2015 or 16. Uber was doing well. They were getting customers increased, like anything, and attracting a lot of VC money. And Travis has an idea about implementing surge pricing. So if you have used Uber in busy times, you would know that they increase the prices if there's heavy demand, right? So again, under a lot of scrutiny, and Travis was everyone, like all the economists and everyone, says that it's not going to work. They're going to drive customers away, and it's going to have a very negative emotional impact on the customers. Travis still went ahead with it, a very huge experiment based on a feeling or a hunch that he had. And now, if you look at it, so Uber is definitely doing it, but surge pricing has kind of become the norm of any industry when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to travel, and things of that nature, right? So what are the common kind of theme points across these three stories? All these three stories had very major impacts, very major decision-making sort of turn points without any detailed analysis, right? So they didn't have this McKinsey 100-page report about how should they go. They didn't have, A/B testing or user testing and none of that. No detailed analysis. They were kind of following a hunch. All these decisions that we just spoke about were often in the middle of a controversy and absolutely against popular expert opinion. And in all these three decisions, the founders or the key decision makers, they had a hunch, and more importantly, they had a courage to follow through with it. So shifting gears a little bit, there was this very popular survey. So they found out that it is still easier to kind of set up a new company, but most of the companies fail when it gets time to scale up. And it's not about the money. It's not about, most of the things. So when they actually ended up doing the survey with most of the founders, the number one common factor that came out, the biggest factor that what was the biggest reason why a startup could not scale, and everyone said that it's a silver bullet, like that X factor that nobody kind of like has a definition to. No one knows, basically. Like you need luck, you need certain other things. So there's a silver bullet which is hindering for a scale up. What is a silver bullet, right? So if very simplistically and oversimplifying this, I believe a silver bullet can be broken down into two different factors: external factors and things like, was the market is not ready, or the like the pricing was not ready. Like, for example, Tesla. So they have been kind of struggling since 2003, with an electric car. In 2018, like 15 years later, they became profitable for the first time. Probably the market wasn't ready at that point in time. So, like external factors can be that. And there are many internal factors as well. So two founders who had a falling out, not finding the right team, not finding the right investor, you're not feeling well, you're having like some sort of issue, or you're just not having that feeling. There are many things within internal factors as well. And within that entire, periphery of the internal factors, there's one factor which we do have some sort of resemblance of a control of, and that is called personal intuition. So I am feeling a certain way, I have a hunch, but there are, of course, many other internal factors as well. But there's this one thing that I somehow have control over in this entire concept of a silver bullet. I definitely don't have any control over external factors, many things not within internal factors as well. But again, like personal intuition is something that I know it's very personal to me, and I have some sort of control around it. So what is an intuition? If you look at the Webster's dictionary's definition, so an intuition is the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning. And if you read, some of the other authors, so Sonia Choquette, she was the author of a bestseller. So she says, especially in a business context, that when you follow your gut instincts, you are putting something very natural to work. Your intuition will take you beyond the threshold to a place that reflects your most passionate interests. And that really resonates with me, right? So in my personal view, like what is my personal analysis about this entire concept of startups and personal intuition? So a little bit about me right now. So I've, I have 14 years of experience doing products. I've lived in more than 7 cities across the world. I've built products for large, Fortune 500 companies such as GE, Toyota, Kraft Heinz, things of that nature. I've done 2 startups with 1 exit and 1 failed miserably. And I've consulted, several other startups as well. And my realization is, again, oversimplifying it, but is on the right-hand side. So if you look at the top pie chart, I believe that, and from what I've seen, is that large organizations, they give a lot of importance to processes of building the product and not so much about that personal hunch or that personal conviction. Conversely, and startups is totally opposite. I believe like personal conviction of the founders and the team is much smaller. It is given a much, much higher importance than actually, the process of building the product. And my personal recipe, my ideal recipe of building a great product is that there should be an equal weightage towards implementing your personal conviction, implementing a good process, and implementing a good practice to hire the best people. So that's this. These are the 3-pronged approach that I believe like is, according to me, the best way that you can think of building a great product. And like usually, then I started reading about things, and in my past decade of experience, you come across certifications, you come across a lot of content. So I've usually found that there are 2 things out of 3 over which there is a lot of content. So, for example, if I talk about processes, so there's so much content and certifications on, agile, waterfall, lean, and things of that nature. When it comes to people, how do you hire them? What are the things that you should be asking them? what are the things that they have done in the past, like, those sort of things. So there is a lot of content for hiring the best people as well. But when it comes to intuition, which I believe is the only sort of connection to that X factor, I generally could not find a lot of content. And that was like very surprising for me, because intuition is something that I, use for me personally, like on my daily life, in different aspects of life, and choosing my meals, to choosing, the right activities, to in the business context, like, choosing the right product features, hiring the person, like this element of intuition, which is always involved. But I never found like any, definitive content around how do I go about implementing this intuition in a scientific manner. So I did what any logical person would do. I wrote a book about how can we implement personal conviction in all aspects of business, and specifically about when you're hiring, when you're choosing the right problems to solve, when you're choosing the right features to build, and when you're trying to kind of trying to constantly innovate. In other words, I believe like a product manager, and I believe a product manager, the reason why I picked product manager only is because I think in a startup or while building products, product manager plays a pivotal role, should be doing four things really well. So of course, he should be looking at user experience and how the experience of using that product will be. Tech, which is the actual technology behind the product. The business context, how do you make money? Or why are you doing that product? And also implementing personal intuition in all these sort of elements. In other words, I have also kind of implemented this in a more structured manner into the book. And I like to call this process as TESC. And I have included personal intuition in all the four parts of TESC, which is how do you choose the right problem? How do you choose the right experiments? How do you scale the right processes? And how do you choose the right innovation ideas? And how do you basically implement personal intuition into all these four different problems? So, I would just leave you with this. So I generally, I think everybody agrees that we are born unique and we are all special and great in a very unique manner. I believe if I put this in a product context, so the only way to achieve greatness in products or in business is to imbibe or leverage on this personal intuition or the personal hunch, which actually makes us unique. And if we can match our personal idiosyncrasies and leverage that into, like a product, I think that's the only way it becomes unique and great. And I also believe that we should strive to achieve greatness at least once in our lifetime. How do we do that? On the left-hand side, this is my personal motto. I believe like we should start doing, and we should give doing, we should learn by doing. We should give doing much more importance than learning. Thank you.
Great job. Do we have any questions? Mike, we've got a question from Robin. For every success story like that of Facebook, Apple, and Uber, there are also a lot of stories where this has gone wrong, right? So how do we know when to trust your gut and when to follow the regular step?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great question. The only thing that, and that's why I was kind of very curious about, like how do we follow these hunches, but in a scientific manner, right? So you are implementing a process around, choosing the right problem or right feature, so that it mitigates risk, but also can you implement like your hunch in a scientific manner? And, at say in about 6 months, you can kind of factor in that whether your hunch is kind of working or not working. So, there should be a scientific manner. So basically my answer to you, I think would be that we should definitely try to implement a hunch, but if you can somehow track it and record it, and learn from it eventually, I think that's the only way where we can mitigate risks going forward.
Awesome. Robin said makes sense. Also, I just want to note that Vanessa, along with the feedback survey, also dropped the link to Mayank's book. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure to check that out, and his website too with some additional resources. We've got time for a few more questions if anything else comes to mind.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that. And also, like, in case you guys don't want to, purchase the book, if you just want to have a look, I'm more than happy to just share the PDF version as well. So please feel free to reach Slack me, and I'd be more than happy to do that.
Mike, when you're consulting with startups, how do you get them to kind of change their thought process around this? I'm sure like often they're, especially startup founders, I've found to be quite stubborn. So how do you kind of get them to see a different approach?
I mean, it's not about getting them to kind of see a different approach, but basically, I think it's very important to kind of ensure that they are doing something which is adding value at any given point in time, right? So typically for startups, and as I had mentioned, a big problem is that they feel that whatever they think is right, and they have to go and implement it. And a large part of the problem is that, and we as human beings are wired to just solutionize every problem that we find, right? So I think startups in general follow a lot on their gut only, and they follow a lot on just like, in their mind, this is how the app should look like, or this is how the website should look like. So I think at that point in time, just to kind of ensure that they're looking at the right things, spending their energy in the right things, I think is more important. So for example, identifying like, who is the right customer. If I times out of 10, if I ask a startup founder that who's who's the customer you're building it for, they would say everyone, and then you kind of think about, no, like, but who's the first person you're going to be targeting? And then what does your sort of, like MVP looks like? So I think those are more critical elements when I try and consult with the startups. And when you try to figure out who your target customer will be, or what is the first problem that you try and start, in those sort of like when you're aligned into those sort of processes, then I try and implement, okay, so you think like, you have 3 different problem statements to start from. What is your hunch, or what is your team's hunch saying, like which one should you be believing? And then with that hunch, like we weight that hunch as well. So for example, say like problem statement 1 has a potential of earning $100. So there's a revenue model around it. Problem 2 has a potential of building $50, but it's easier to build. So basically, when you're choosing frameworks, so you have different elements based on which you choose the frameworks, and in those elements, I try and kind of imbibe the personal intuition factor in it. I'm sorry, like I think I gave like a long answer, but does it by any chance help, or should I kind of rephrase some of it a little bit?
No, that makes sense.
Right.
Thank you. And then Johnny also had a question. If you work with a team, how can you sell the idea to them over regular models?
If I work with, so typically, I think, and this is becoming very important, very popular these days. Whenever you're building products, people have started to look at, imbibing empathy of the customer, right? Like, what is the emotional pattern of the customer? How does he feel when he's doing like a product? But nobody actually talks about imbibing empathy of the team who's actually building that product. So I think that this actually has been the easiest exercise for me when I tell them that when I'm working with a team who's building a product, and they can be within engineering or marketing or sales or whatever, that, hey guys, like as you're building it, like how do you feel about it? Like what is your personal hunch about it? And let's write it down. And if, like say 10 people have personal hunches about, a certain feature, then can we have a discussion about it? And people like teams generally like really, really seem to like it. So this has been a very easier conversation, and showing them that you should imbibe your own personal empathy while building a product, and B, having this collaborative approach where everyone kind of talks about their hunch. You prioritize that hunch, and then that kind of actually makes it into a product feature. So yeah, that's kind of like how I go about it.
Perfect. Any other questions or any other final thoughts from you, Mike?
No, no, thanks a lot. I think this was great. More than happy to kind of continue the conversation in case anyone is interested. And yeah, if just want to repeat, if you wanted the free version of the book, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to share it with you and get your insights. But thank you for the opportunity.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everybody. I know we are coming at the top of the hour. So again, if you are interested in reaching out to any of our speakers and have any other questions after this, please feel free to contact them. But let's give a round of applause to Islam, Johnny, and Mayank. If you learned something interesting today, show our speakers some love, drop some emojis in the chat. Our next event will be on November 23rd. And I do want to mention that we have some speaking slots available. So if you were inspired by today, if you are also passionate about something, if you want to practice your public speaking skills, then please feel free to DM me, Jessica Pham, on Slack. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to join the Progue Speakers Academy channel in Slack to learn more about our public speaking initiatives. We'll also post a recording from today in that channel afterwards too. So don't forget to complete those feedback forms. I know our speakers will really appreciate some insights into their presentations today. Vanessa has dropped everything in the chat for you, and just want to say thank you again so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.